Hello and welcome back to the Mouth of the Tyne Podcast brought to you by the Shields Gazette. I'm Joe Buck and I'm joined today with Miles Starforth. Miles, how are you? Heading, 2 days before Wembley? How are you feeling?
I'm good. It's going to come up quickly, really. We've been so busy, I know you too, this week. You haven't had too much time to think about the actual getting to Wembley, the game, and it's almost upon us now. So it's probably been a good thing we've been so busy, as you haven't had too much time to think about the actual. No, there's been no nerves yet, as in any case.
As you say, it's been a busy week, and we'll talk about all the things that have been going on around the club in a minute. But news is, just broke just before we start recording here about Miguel Almiron signing a new 3.5 deal with Newcastle United. That's for me, that's a massive statement of intent and something that he deserves from form this year. What's your thoughts about that new deal?
Well, it's interesting. I remember when it was the takeover came along, and it was being said by some people online, he'll be one of the first players out the door. If you remember, Almiron hadn't certainly been at his best in the latter part of Steve Bruce's time. He didn't really find a role for him. The one thing you get, though, at Almiron is a work ethic and an intensity. I remember at the time thinking, well, that can't be right. Given what he gives to a team, he's probably one of the first names on Eddie Howe's team sheet, because that's exactly what Eddie Howe looks for. So I thought that talk of him going and bringing big names, and Almiron will be one of the first out the door. The club will move on. He'll get better players. That kind of jarred with me, because I just felt he was one of the players that would be perfect for Eddie Howe, and that's how it's turned out. And I kind of think back to last summer and in pre-season when we got that kind of glimpse with Benfica. He just seems in a really good place. He scored goals. He was linking well with Trippier on that side, and that's what we've seen all through this season. It's that kind of partnership with Trippier, the kind of triangles as well with the midfield, which have been such a key part of the team's success this season.
Absolutely, I think, like you say, we'll talk about the match in another podcast, but I think Almiron is probably one of the keys to success against Man U. And it's good to see the club are committing, the players have got now, because as much as you want to add all these superstars, you need a core of players who've been there at the club. And, we know what you're going to get from Almiron every game. As you say, tireless work, and he's improved remarkably under Eddie Howe. So I think it's a great deal for the club.
And and certainly those 10 goals have been so important to this team when they've had to be without their goal scorers. They've had to be without Isak. They've had to be without Wilson at different times. They've had Guimaraes suspended. They've missed some key players. He's been a consistent for this team. Okay, there's been peaks and troughs in terms of his goal scoring, but 10 goals is fantastic. When you add that to what he gives you off the ball in terms of his press and his work rate, you can see why he's such an important player to this club.
Absolutely. Now, moving back after that news, we go back to Tuesday. The club held a media day for journalists and press of various people. What was that like as someone who was there? What were the general feelings around the camp? Obviously, that was 5 days before the final, so that was still a long time before Wembley's. What were the feelings around Newcastle that day?
Well, I've been covering this club for kind of 23 years now, and it was a kind of a first for me, really. I've never reported on a final. I've never been to a cup final media day. So it's after 23 years as well. So it was good. There was 3 players, and Eddie Howe who was speaking to the press. So Eddie Howe didn't do his usual press on Friday, which is today. We're all used to his kind of updates on a Friday, the day before a game or before a weekend. So we haven't had that. Instead, Eddie Howe spoke at the start of the week, and I think that kind of suited him really to get the media commitments out of the way at the start of the week. Of course, Eddie Howe spoke quite a lot about Nick Pope, that situation, the goalkeepers, as well as 1 or 2 other issues. And Kieran Trippier, Dan Burn and Sean Longstaff also spoke to the media. And it was the early part of the week, so there was no kind of, you couldn't sense any nerves, you couldn't sense any kind of anything other than players who are really looking forward to the week and looking forward to getting the work done that they need to do ahead of the final. Of course, you look at Manchester United, they had a game in between. They were at Barcelona last night, which we'll discuss. But yeah, they're very relaxed and at ease, really. All spoke well. Spoke about their respective stories. Of course, Sean Longstaff, a couple of years ago, he was essentially frozen out of the team. If you'd said to him then, 2 years later, you'll be a fixture in a Premier League team, or a team which is fifth in the Premier League, which has been fourth, third, and looking forward to a cup final, he wouldn't have believed you. Then there's Dan Burn. There's his story. He was kind of released at quite a young age. Wasn't formally part of the club's academy or centre of excellence at the time, but he trained with the club as a young boy. He was released and had to kind of. His journey's been a hard one. He's come up through the leagues. He started at Darlington, and then of course there's Kieran Trippier and his wealth of experience, and the first signing for the new ownership, and what a signing he was. So it was good to speak to all of them, and of course get Eddie Howe's views on a number of issues.
As you touched on before, one of the big issues coming out of Saturday's game against Liverpool was obviously Nick Pope's suspension. Loris Karius is now, they haven't announced he's going to start, but everyone assumes and everyone, 90% sure he's going to play. How do you think that dynamic of having Karius rather than Pope in goal might impact Newcastle on Sunday?
Well, it's not ideal, of course. Pope's been tremendous this season. He's been a very, very good signing, and it was very uncharacteristic what he did, because he hasn't made too many mistakes. First things first, we asked Howe if there was going to be an appeal. Not surprising there wasn't, because he would have had next to zero chance of succeeding and could have had his punishment increased. The thing with Karius and Mark Gillespie is they've just not had any game time. I think it's off the top of my head, Mark Gillespie's last competitive kind of senior game came in would have been a League Cup tie away to Newport County. That's more than 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And then you've got Karius, who's played 45 minutes of a friendly in December, and again he didn't play for Liverpool last season, so he's gone a long time without a competitive game. I asked that question to Eddie Howe at the press conference, and he said, well, it would be a far bigger concern, of course, if it was an outfield player. He said the goalkeepers have done what they need to do. They do what they need to do every day of the week. He was less concerned by that. Of course, experience-wise, it all points to Karius being in goal. He's played at a very high level, played in some very big games, and has got a very good pedigree. So this can go. The story's almost written itself, or we hope it's written itself, in terms of this kind of cup final redemption after what happened with Liverpool in that Champions League final in 2018. Let's just hope that's the story, because Loris Karius is a very good goalkeeper. He's had a very good career up to now. He's just had an awful time in one game, and that's really affected his career. But everyone we speak to at the club, kind of on the record, off the record, has been very impressed with him as a person and as a goalkeeper. And going off what they say, they're very relaxed about the fact that he could be in goal, or most likely will be in goal at Wembley. And I think I'd take a lot of confidence from that.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think if it was any other season, I'm maybe a bit worried, but the fact Newcastle's defence have been so strong this year, they've got the best record in the Premier League. I know Pope's kept so many clean sheets, but you don't tend to come out with too many games thinking, Nick Pope saved Newcastle there with like 3 or 4 stunning saves. So I think that as a defensive unit, they can probably protect Karius quite a lot. Not that Karius would necessarily need protecting, but I think as a unit, they're probably very solid. And much like you've said there with the whole, if they've got the support of the team, the coach and staff, then I don't think there's anyone to argue with that, really. I think that it's not ideal, but, it would be not typical Newcastle United to make it easy for themselves. So they've just got to go into Sunday as much as they can do, and hope that the defense will be able to cope with Karius behind them. I think that another thing, one of the main topics from Eddie Howe's press conference and talk to the media, was the fact that they were treating the game very much as a normal game, not treating it as a cup final. You saw, Dan Burn talk about the fact that he didn't end up getting his suit measured after his video and all that. So what for me that stands Newcastle in good stead, that they're going to treat this like any other game. What are your thoughts about that?
I tend to agree. Of course, it isn't any other game, but why not treat it as any other game? Eddie Howe's all about kind of routine and keeping things as I don't know, as normal as they can, and you can totally understand that. It's easy to get swept up on when living in Tyneside with the whole kind of cup final fever. You can't leave the house without there's flags, there's signs. It's brilliant, but the players themselves are just going to focus on what they've got to do in the game. It's not like any other game. It's one of the biggest occasions this club has had for decades, really, for a long time. It could be the first domestic trophy since the mid-50s. It's a huge game, but I think it's right to have this kind of approach. The whole suit thing, it would be nice to see them arrive in some suits, but is that going to make any difference in the field? Is it potentially a distraction? No, I think they'll turn up in their tracksuits and they'll get on with it, as they have been doing every game this season. Eddie Howe, he may well turn up in a suit and then quickly change into a tracksuit, as he did, if you remember, earlier this season amid the tributes for the Queen. So no, I think that's understandable. They're going to go to London the day before the game, as they would do for any other game in the capital. No special measures. So let's hope that just keeps their focus and it just minimises distractions, really.
Yeah, and there'll be 32,000, almost 33,000 Newcastle fans at Wembley on Sunday. All of them will be hoping to see Kieran Trippier, Jamal Lascelles, whoever, lift that trophy. Now, you spoke to the last Newcastle United captain to lift a major trophy. That was Bob Moncur, obviously back in 1969. How was that for you? How was meeting him, and what did he have to say about Sunday's game?
Well, I was very lucky, really. I used to travel to away games with Bob when he used to give me a lift to games when he worked for Real Radio. He used to cover those games with Pete Graves, and we used to go away to games together, and it was fantastic. I've heard, I loved hearing his stories. And Bob was an absolute machine. He would comfortably drive to all these games without a stop. He'd be on time, ready to go, and he was everyone else in the car who was wanting breaks or turning up late, and he had a lot. I think we tested his patience at times, but no, I've always loved hearing Bob's stories, and of course, it's hard. It's easy to forget how long ago he lifted that trophy. Almost 54 years now. It's extraordinary, really, to think about it. And he's had this tag, the last man to lift the trophy, and he's absolutely ready to pass that on to Kieran Trippier. Though, of course, it could be Jamal Lascelles who lifts the trophy inside the stadium. But he's been very impressed. What was clear, he's very impressed with Trippier as a leader and a player this season. He's a big admirer of Kieran Trippier. Bob will be going to Wembley. He's going to be doing some work in some corporate work down there. So he's really looking forward to it. And what was interesting, he spoke about 69, and he said he was 24 at the time. He didn't really have an idea of what that team had just done. Of course, it was a big deal that there was 50,000 turn up for the home games. It was a big cup win, but the real enormity of what they achieved is only just really sunk in over the years. And he said now he's a fan, and he'll be going to Wembley as a fan to cheer on this team. He can appreciate what they did as a team, and it'll be the same for this group of players. They probably, and we all, without tempting fate, if they can go and win it, they may not appreciate what they have done for this club. But let's just hope they can get what would be a momentous and historic win.
As you say, the 1969 team, last one, they would never have dreamt that would be the last time Newcastle lift a major trophy till hopefully Sunday. But even if they don't win on Sunday, even if the worst happens in Manchester United, inflicts more final heartache on them, do you feel like this is a start of a potentially new era and something that hopefully, from our point of view, from fans' point of view, the finals then become a regular thing, and these days don't feel so special, because they always do, but become a regular occurrence?
Yeah, let's hope so. This feels kind of so new to us, really. We haven't had finals since the late 90s. We've had kind of the semi-finals and other big occasions and some near misses and what have you. But yeah, let's hope so. We're just not used to this this kind of occasion, this kind of build up, this kind of week. Really, as I said, we're just let's just enjoy it.
Absolutely. I don't know whether Newcastle fans will enjoy it. For me personally, I think I'll enjoy the whole weekend, bar the 90 minutes, 120 minutes of football we might get. I think that'll be possibly the most stressful football of the season. But, it's here, and I think we've just got to embrace it. And as you say, it doesn't happen often. So, yes, everyone travelling down London, if you watch it in the pubs in Newcastle or at home, please try and enjoy it if you can. And all, we're going to be there, me, you, Domsker, a colleague, is going to be there. We're going to be bringing you all the best content from Trafalgar Square, Covent Garden, wherever Newcastle fans congregate on the day. We're going to be bringing everything from the match, the build-up, the reaction, and of course, hopefully, bringing the stories of Newcastle's first major trophy win since 1969. And obviously, the best way to stay up to date with all the very latest from Wembley and Newcastle's journey this weekend is with the Shields Gazette. Miles, thank you for joining me in another episode of the Mouth of Tyne podcast, and stay tuned for part 2 where we'll preview the game with Manchester United.